And thank you, Jonathan. So good to be on a call with you today. When we booked this a few months ago, my heart exploded with excitement because I've always enjoyed our conversations. I've always enjoyed your perspectives. And before we jump in, I should do the official bio intro. Otherwise, seasonal health.
Oh, Jonathan, are you able to hear me? Is it
I can hear you, yeah.
okay? Maybe Edward's audio is cutting out. Jonathan, perhaps while Edward gets his audio, do you mind just sharing a little bit about your bio and your background?
Yes, absolutely. So nice to be here. My name is Jonathan Neman. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Sweetgreen. Our mission is to connect people to real food. We started the company in 2007 while seniors at college, and it started as a very simple
Am I
idea.
back?
Just there, hey Edward, you're back.
Cool.
I'm back.
Edward, I had Jonathan start to read his own bio, so
Read his own bio. Um,
Hi,
and
Jonathan.
He's got 100 locations, over 100 locations. So before we jump in, Jonathan, I should say that this is not a fake background. I am in Costa Rica. I came down for the week. And if I look a little tan, if I look a little windswept, it's because I am in Nosara, Costa Rica. And I am in a special location because I have not one, but two internet service providers at the ready. So one just went down. I switched to the other. If this goes down, I'll go back to the first one, but we should be stable for the rest of the call.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, Jonathan, so good to see you. Thank you for making time for this. I like to start these calls kind of at the personal level. I like to just jump in and talk about you running the company, managing yourself. Um, let's start a little bit around like how you manage yourself for optimal performance. Like, do you have any unconventional self-care techniques, anything that you do that might be out of the ordinary, or it's quite ordinary, but it just really works for you?
So, I think, how you manage the performance of a company it really directs back to how you manage your own energy as well.
Yeah.
And so I do spend a lot of time thinking about how to take care of myself and how to manage my energy and get the right clarity that I need in order to drive the company. So there's a lot of I think things that I've picked up over the years to really optimize my energy levels, my focus, and the overall performance. So I'd say the core of it really starts with for me my meditation practice is something that I've had for a long time, and then over this past year really committed to. So I'm approaching my 400th day consistent meditation, which I do every morning. And I think that's kind of like the baseline of just really helping me just get clear for the day and be present. And I think it's equally as important on really crazy stressful days, or even like days where I'm not working and I want to enjoy life and enjoy every moment. Those meditations are also really clear. Just it's almost like brushing your teeth for your brain.
Yeah.
So that's
How do
that's
you make
definitely the
sure
first.
it's a daily habit? Because you got a lot of distractions. You've got a company you're running. You have wife and two young kids. Like a lot of people say to remind them to run every morning, they put their shoes next to the bed, the running shoes. So they have this visual reminder. What are your visual reminders and how do you kind of make the decision? I can't deal with that right now. I need to do this because
Well,
that's where people lose it.
yeah, so it was always it was always for me meditation was always something that it was a maybe. It was like
Yeah.
if I can, I'll do it. And I
Yeah.
switched the mindset to I'm going to do it the first thing I do when I wake up before I have my coffee, and I love my coffee. So so it's like in order
Love
to
it.
like get to my coffee, it's
Yeah.
really sit and meditate, and I got to do it, and I got to do it this morning. My kids woke up early. It made it really, really challenging. Like if you got to do it before my kids wake up.
Yeah.
And my kids wake up around 6:30. So I got to kind of get that meditation in, usually around 6 in
Yeah.
the morning. But it only, it only takes around, 15 or 20 minutes, and it just gives so many gifts for the rest of the day. And I think something that compounds over time. There's a number of other practices that I use. One thing that for me that I think is magical is walking, and what walking does to just bringing thoughts and bringing clarity. So I take a lot of walks, especially on weekends. On Saturday morning, I take a walk and I live on a hill. I take a long walk up a hill. I usually wear some weights. Usually I actually don't even listen to anything, just let my mind go and really find clarity. And then on the way back down, my team hears from me. So on Saturday morning, it's almost when I like kind of take that moment to kind of process the week, think about the, what's coming, and then, have a lot of those phone calls, and that helps me a lot in terms of organizing the week. I spend a
I
lot
like
of
that.
time.
You fill up your brain on the way up the hill and then
Yeah,
empty it on the
exactly.
way down. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, so get
Yeah,
out of breath and then come down, and then I spend an hour. I call my partners, I call my CFO, I call my COO, just checking in, making sure that we're all on the same page. Whatever epiphany or hypothesis I had for the day, can be shared. The other things, I do think that in a good to be a great leader, overall, I believe having some relative balance across your life is important. So like having work be great, but neglecting family can over time deteriorate your performance at work because it can become a distraction. So I really try to, I have two young kids, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'm married, and so and I have a huge family. So family is very important to me, and so really have had to spend a lot of time just thinking about how to prioritize the different buckets of my life between my family, my work, my health, and my fitness. That's the other piece of it. I find that a healthy body leads to a healthy mind. And so I
sure.
I work out every single day, kind of first thing in the morning. Obviously, with Sweetgreen, my mission is around connecting people to real food. So I do think nutrition is really important. And I do think health, and sleep is really critical. I think over the past,
Yeah,
something that for the first 10 years or maybe 15 years of my career, I neglected. I've now really understood the power of sleep. So I really do try to prioritize it and get to bed early. So I
yeah,
can just have that sharpest mind. And then lastly, for me, I know that you got to fill your own bucket and have these things. For me, I love nature. I love being outdoors. I love adrenaline. And so whether it's surfing is probably and you and I share that, my happy
yeah,
place. It's a meditation and an activity at once. But skiing or snowboarding is another one. Hiking, just doing something in nature. I feel like nature has all of the answers. And so those are some of
yeah,
my practices around my own self-care.
yeah, yeah. And I love seeing the sweet green surfboard here in the corner. I
Yeah.
next time I want to see a little wax on it, that in the water. But I love that you said about sleep. A friend of mine likes to say that sleep is the love of her life, right? And like it's like this partner she can never part from. And I think it's underrated. I've worked with some founders. We get a little bit into the engagement, and I realize they're sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night. I'll sleep when I'm dead. And they're not realizing that sleep is the ultimate reset. It's the ultimate brain cleanser. It's where all of our mental fitness and physical fitness comes from.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So for me, it's probably years ago, someone gifted me an Oura ring, probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And I wore it religiously for a few years. And I think I don't wear it anymore. I now know it. I've just can feel it in my body and I understand it. And I've learned the tips and tricks around prioritizing sleep. And it's become, there's weeks where it's tough when I'm traveling a bunch, but generally I really, it's really important for me. Like Monday, Tuesday night, I'm like in bed at 8:30.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So what do you do when you travel? Because that confounds a lot of people. Like I've got great habits. I've got great self-care routine when I'm at home, and I've got my gym nearby. Have my routine. I know exactly when I'm going to bed. And then they're on the wrong time zone. They're traveling for work. They're at a conference. They have to be at this dinner until 11 with clients, and then it all goes to hell.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you can actually maintain those self-care techniques? Like you smiling, you're like, I know when it goes to hell. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not easy, and it really depends. There's weeks where I travel and I'm going to, 4 cities in 2.5 or 3 days, and so it can be challenging depending on, what the flights are. But I have, learned that, if I can schedule a trip or with some room where my first meeting doesn't start at 7:30, and I have still time, I book a hotel with a gym, and I still am able to work out and reset and start my first meeting at 8:30 or something, I'm a much better person. So I really do try to prioritize working out while I'm gone. Again, I usually where I'm going, there's a Sweetgreen, so I'm eating healthy while I'm on the road. I do try
Yeah.
to do, I really have learned, I'm not a huge fan of work dinners. Um,
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
everything you said, you end up,
Sure.
staying out late, drinking when you don't want to. And so I've really tried, I try to really, especially on the weekdays, really limit my drinking. So I try to avoid work dinners as best I can. And if I do, like earlier the better. I really end up doing much more breakfast, lunch meetings and just being planful. So when I plan my trip, it's like, all right, this, usually just try to find a hotel with the gym in it, or know that I can go on a run nearby or something like that, and just know that if I take care of myself, I'll be a much much better leader.
Yeah. 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 And
But
how do you,
again, there's weeks where you
yeah,
you gotta you gotta grind and you gotta show
gotta
up,
grind.
and things fall by, and that's partially why you fill your tank is
Mm,
so when you do have, you can't be also so precious about it where it's like, oh my God, I didn't get my 8 hours of sleep, I'm gonna be a dysfunctional human being. Like you gotta be able to be functional no matter
yeah.
what the conditions, but
Right.
try to create the optimal conditions where we can.
Yeah, exactly. Like as a parent, you don't get to choose when you show up as a parent. You have
That's
to be
right.
on parent all the time. And as a CEO, I think it's much the same, right?
Yeah.
Um, Tell me about a time when you were under immense pressure and how you handled it. I know, as a company, you guys had a really hard time with COVID, right? And you came out of that. And I mean, your stock has been unbelievable performance over the last 2 years. But there were some dark days there. And it was around the time when we were working together, actually, right?
Yeah.
And would love to hear like how you manage that intense pressure that it almost wants to break you, right? And you can't let it in those moments.
Yeah, there's been a number of moments in this past 17 or 18 years. A few
Yeah.
that the past 4 or 5 years has been especially challenging. COVID has really changed our business
Yeah.
from day one with the pandemic. We were down about 80%. It was incredibly challenging and really had to work to adjust the business, first keep our team safe, adjust the business model through more delivery and think about our menu and really try to pivot the business to get it to a more sustainable place. I'd say, over the past about, the year after being public was really challenging. I think we thought that the world was going to return to some version of
Mm.
pre-COVID from where traffic is in cities where most of our restaurants at the time were. And that
Yep.
never happened. So our base case on what the world was going to look like totally changed. And so we had to
Mm.
re-underwrite the business and really take a first principles approach of going forward. But what helps me is, you know, taking sometimes you get stuck in the day to day, the weekly sales or what's going on for the day, the week, the month, or the quarter. But it's very helpful to just zoom out for me.
Yeah.
Take a step back and think about what's our mission, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to do over the long time? And understand that the power of compounding is real. And we have a very beautiful
Mm.
business model in the fact that we have a massive market, right? We can have thousands and thousands of restaurants just in the United States.
Sure.
And so you can have good days and bad days or good quarters and bad quarters, but if we just focus on our customers, focus on our team members, create the best products we can, and serve just delicious, high quality food, we know that as we open more stores and continue to build the brand over time, things will work out. So,
Yeah.
you got to almost ignore the noise. You got to just kind of put the
Hmm.
blinders on and become immune to some of the noise, the pain, the losses, and just kind of focus on the long-term mission, like think like
Yeah.
10, 20 years ahead. And staying focused there really kind of gets you out of can get you out of just doubting yourself or being discouraged or wanting to give up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very rare actually for a public company CEO to have such a long-term perspective, right? Because most public company CEOs are managing for the quarter. It's all about earnings. It's all about, the relationship with the analysts and investors. And what I'm hearing you say is that I have to ignore all of that, right? I have to invest in the long term. I've got to have the 20-year view. How do you respond to the pressure of your investors who are like, Jonathan, we need performance in the stock price now? And I
Yeah.
know nothing about this call is is to provide any foregoing guidance, but like how do you have those conversations?
And I wouldn't say that we ignore the quarter. We don't ignore the
Yeah.
analysts or investors. And I do believe that, what being public does is there's a level of transparency and that creates accountability internally.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I do appreciate that, and I do think that how you set expectations, how do you get the investors you deserve that believe in what you're trying to do long term and understand, are you playing the short game or the long term? But you also have to deliver on the things you say, and that's what builds trust over time. And so
Yeah.
that's what I remind our team all the time, plus or minus, $1 million in a quarter may not really matter to the long-term trajectory of the business, but some things do matter. The underlying trend, some of the big strategic decisions and where it's like the trajectory does matter. So I try not to sweat the small stuff, but I do, make sure I sweat the big things, the things that are going to be, compounding factors over time. And so
Yeah.
part of my job as a CEO is to really just provide focus on what are those things. What are those things? What's more important is, okay, we can't control the weather. Weather impacts our sales a lot. Sometimes people freak out. It's like, oh, sales are, not great because of weather. It's like, well, we can't control that, but let's talk about what we can control and really focus in on those few things. And I think one of my big lessons as a leader has been, it may seem counterintuitive, but as you get bigger, you think you can do more because you have more resources,
Sure.
you have more
It makes
people,
a
you have
lot of
more
sense.
resources. It makes sense. You're like, all right, I used to have two people working here. Now I have thousands of people. I can just do more things. And the reality is, as you get bigger, focus matters more. Um,
Mm.
and doing fewer things better is much better than trying to throw a lot of things at the wall. And I think and it takes some courage because when I think back 2 years ago when the company was in a bit of a rough patch, the natural instinct is let's just throw stuff at the wall. Let's do 20
Yeah,
things to try to fix it.
sure.
And
There's like an energy of desperation that comes up.
y-
Well, we should try this. We should try this. We should try this. And then
yes,
you spread thin.
and it's your spread thin, you're not doing anything well. And what I've
Yeah.
learned is even in those moments, having the courage to say, all right, we're not going to do those five things, so we can do this one thing or these two things super well, and then setting the expectation, the bar for your team. And for us, it's, our theme, for this year has been this idea of a relentless pursuit of quality. We know that
Mm.
what drives our business model, what our core competency is providing high quality food and a high quality experience. Like that's what matters most. If we play our game right and we give people delicious, high quality food and a great experience, they will come back, they will tell their friends, and the flywheel just works. So I really try to, always bring it back to, our mission and then the people that we serve. And here at the support center, we call ourselves a support center for a reason. We're here
Yeah.
to support our team
The
members.
headquarters at the support center.
It's called we call the Sweetgreen Support Center versus the headquarters because our job is supporting our restaurants that serve our
Yes.
customers.
That's a really interesting um, orientation, right? As opposed to this is headquarters, you report to us, you owe us, it's we owe support to you.
Yes.
A very, I would say, very forward-thinking orientation. I like that a lot. I'd love to double click on mission and passion. That's really the theme of today, right? Mastering leadership, the intersection of passion and purpose. And we'd love to hear a little bit about how you keep your personal why alive in the business, even under all this pressure to perform, right? Like you must be interacting constantly with spreadsheets and numbers and its reports and its earnings and its share price. But like, how do you keep that core of the mission front and center for not just yourself, but everybody?
I'd say I'm very fortunate that I happen to do something that I really love and I really believe in. That's part of why I started it. I really believe that, what we're trying to do is build healthier communities by connecting people to real food. And so much of that I feel like was my purpose from a very young age of wanting to, I believe that capitalism is the greatest force for good.
Mhm.
And I think that there's a way to structure it that it does good and not, by making more money, we can do more good in the world. And we're lucky that our core business model has that built into it. We don't have to have social impact programs because all we have to do is open more restaurants and serve more customers and provide more access to real food. just by doing that, our core
Yeah.
business model has that kind of purpose built into it. So I think I'm very fortunate in that. And I'm fortunate that one thing that I advise other young founders on is pick a big category. 'Cause your food is huge. It means we can grow for a very, very long time, and it helps me zoom out. It helps me think about, how big food is, and not just something big, but something with good underlying trends. I think something we
Mm.
saw when we were in college is food is going to change, and people's relationship with food will change, and
Yeah.
people care more about what they put into their bodies, and we want to be positioned as the company to service those needs. And so it was a bet on the next kind of 50 or 100 years that the current food system is not doing us any good and there needs to be a better way. And so by having this really big mission that we're going after, I think about Sweetgreen not just as a restaurant or consumer brand, but in many ways I think about it as like a Trojan horse for a healthcare company.
Right.
We tell you that,
Right.
it's just food, but really food is health. And how do we make it sexy and delicious and fun? But really, what we're doing is in a lot of ways, we're providing healthcare. And for me, that's very motivating knowing how broken the food system is here in the US, how broken the health of this nation is. And, we talk about a lot of the tangential issues, but we started at the beginning. It's food, sleep, and exercise, and food is
Yeah.
such a large component of that. And it's not most people's fault that they don't eat good food. It's
Right.
not they're not educated about it, and it's not accessible. It's hard if it's hard to find just clean, unprocessed food. And so for us at Sweetgreen, if we could just open thousands of restaurants, provide access to delicious and healthy food, for me, that's very inspiring, and I think for a lot of people as well.
Yeah. I mean, you probably know more about the history of food in the US than most people, but at some point, good food became the butt of jokes, right?
Yeah.
Like broccoli, like it was like the worst thing you could put in front of a kid was broccoli. Growing up, my mother, God bless her, she didn't have access to like great cookbooks, perhaps, or, she was raised in a home that was like meat and potatoes. So my mother boiled vegetables. I remember boiled Brussels sprouts, right? These flavorless, flaccid things that you just put salt on to make it taste like anything. And in America, I think healthy and flavorful were thought of as just opposites, right? Like there's no way you could eat well in a way that is good for you and it actually tastes good. And like, do you still feel that you're kind of turning the tide on that narrative a little bit? Is it still in people's brains that like, if this is good for me, it's probably going to taste horrible?
I think it's changed a lot in the past
Yeah.
18 years. I
Yeah.
think that was, one of my early pitches was exactly that. It's that, Coca-Cola is selling you happiness. And we're,
Right.
in the health food industry is saying, eat your vegetables. It's
Yeah.
like not a great, what sounds better? Like when
Yeah.
we
Yeah. Eat
got
your vegetables sounds scolding, right?
scolding,
It's like a
like do it
grandmother
because it's
saying,
good for you versus, be happy. Like,
yeah.
it's, the market, you got to give it to traditional fast food and soda and like the CPG industry. They were brilliant at marketing. And one of the things that we set out to do early on is be as good at branding and packaging our product as they are, but serve a product that is better for you. But I think the other piece that's really important is we don't serve like our view is more about high quality, unprocessed real food
Mhm.
because I think healthy is too broad of a term. Like that, for me, that is what healthy is. Healthy is different for everyone depending on what your needs are. But it's undeniable that eating real unprocessed food is good for you.
That's right.
And for us, everything that we do in our supply chain and everything we do in our kitchens to make that is a differentiator for us. So whether it be our local supply chain, how we source our food directly from farmers and really focus
Mhm.
on, high quality regenerative producers, all the way to the freshness in the kitchens where we don't have commissaries. We make all of our food from scratch in every store every day. So
Wow.
there's that craft in the kitchen, but I remind the team, and we have to do a better job probably reminding our customers, the reason we do all of that isn't just because like it feels good or to be market rich. It's because it makes the food taste better. We
Yeah.
believe that sourcing this better food actually tastes better. And so, in a
Right. So you don't have
way,
these like 3-day-old carrots that have been chopped, on a Monday, you're serving them on a Friday and they're all like dry and bent, like
That's
everything
right.
was prepared that day.
Yeah, and we do have to do a better job of meeting customers where they are. So as an example, we started off as mostly salads. We're not really a salad company anymore. Over half our menu is protein plates and warm bowls. We're getting ready to launch a new product called Ripple Fries. It's our, we're launching Sweetgreen's launching French fries. You'd
Oh,
think like, whoa, that doesn't seem like it fits, but it totally does because it's our take on French fries. It's a
right.
seed oil free French fries, hand cut French fries, made to, all, we're making them throughout the day fresh, and they're made without any of the preservatives and crap in it. So we're not against, you know, eating French fries, or, when we launched steak last year, people thought that was a little bit, ooh, Sweetgreen serving steak. I think steak is super healthy.
Yeah.
I personally think steak is a great part of the diet, and those people that love it. And so Sweetgreen's there to kind of meet you where you are and do it in our way. So if we're going to serve steak, we're going to serve you grass-fed, grass-finished steak. We're going to serve you a better quality steak, not only because we think it's better for you, but it's better for the environment. And so we got to find the intersection of what is good for you and what you truly value.
Yeah, yeah. Jonathan, I think of you as the Yvon Chouinard of food. Yvon Chouinard, the founder of
Of
Patagonia,
course.
right? Like the man who like keeps the principles first and foremost. And like one thing that Chouinard was known for was making thousands of decisions that were not as profitable as the alternative. And how often do you find you need to make that kind of values-based decision where you're choosing purpose over profit? Or have you gotten to the point now where you've figured out how to be like perfectly aligned on those two values?
I think there's always going to be some positive tension there, which I
Yeah.
think is good. In the food business, and I tell this story to our teams a lot. There's a classic death by 1,000 paper cuts in food, because scaling food is really hard.
Yep.
What you can do in one store by hand is now really hard when you have 100 or 1,000 stores, and we have 250 today. So scaling creates a lot of challenges, especially when you're dealing with, fresh, scratch-made food, which is why you have most food companies lead to these models, which are commissary, kind of frozen food shipped out and reheated.
Commissary, does that mean like they make it in one location
Correct. There's a
in
central
mass, like in a
kitchen,
factory, and then
yeah,
they serve it at the restaurants?
that's exactly right. For us, we
Okay.
knew that our core value proposition was the freshness and the quality. So by
Yeah.
doing that, we can create consistency and maybe more profitable restaurants and a more profitable business, but that would degrade and erode the core thing that people love of us. So it was
Yeah.
almost like what we have to do is figure out how to scale. We call this idea of like intimacy at scale. How do we scale those things that make us special, which means we may have to innovate around that. So for us,
Mhm.
one of those examples was instead of putting a commissary or a central kitchen and automating all our food prep, the food prep is actually what leads to the quality and the taste and the flavor and the
Yeah.
freshness. Similarly, like the supply chain, that's what people love about us. I don't want to sacrifice the quality of the food we're buying, but maybe there's a different way to find efficiencies and consistencies. And for us, one of those examples has been how we've invested in technology. What started off is a lot of tools that we introduced and software to really create better workflows in the kitchen, to now what we call our newest endeavor, which is the Infinite Kitchen, which is our automation initiative. We're now in 13 of our restaurants, and many more to come, are the bowls are actually assembled by a machine.
Huh.
So we've preserved the sourcing, high quality sourcing. We've preserved the scratch cooking. We've even been able to elevate it in order to find the offset in the assembly of the bowls. And
Yeah.
that becomes a win-win-win because it's faster for the customers, it's easier for the team members. You're actually getting a better quality product. And so that's all one way we've kind of found we've innovated through that tension. I will say I don't believe that, I think between, you made the Chenard comparison. I do, love him a lot, and look up to him. I'd say for us, the it's really about being customer obsessed more than anything.
Yeah.
And so there's a difference between what you should want and what you care about. And so we want to make sure we prioritize, like,
As a customer, you mean?
as a
What you should?
customer, as a
Yeah.
customer. So like we can, because you could go really far in terms of food quality on everything. Like you could get to everything organic and GAP certified. Like you could go as far as you want and make things kind of unaffordable and unscalable. We've gone
Sure.
pretty far, but the question is, what things do you really care about?
Hmm.
And let's make sure we prioritize those things, knowing that our customers do care about health and what they put in their body. So one example recently is there's been a big conversation around seed oils recently, and so we've decided that's something we want to lead on. Customers care about that, and so we've been on a a journey to remove seed oils outside of the restaurants and bringing people along on that journey.
Hmm. So is it only olive oil in the store
Of
now?
olive oil and avocado oil, not entirely across
Yeah.
the whole restaurant, but all of our cooking and we're most of our dressing. So we're making our way through where we
It's
will get there.
tremendous.
But yeah, it's you can, most things are now completely seed oil free. And the seed oil that we use is a seed oil, that we think we are proud of. It's a high olealic sunflower oil. So
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
but those are the types of questions. It's like, how important is organic? It's important to you, but how much will you pay for it? And so
Right, right,
trying
right.
to find the line between, what our customers really care about, and what we can do at scale.
How has this commitment to purpose and you being really passionate about the purpose made recruiting executives more challenging? Because I imagine you can find dozens, hundreds of executives who are coming out of traditional fast food, traditional restaurateurs, are like, here's how you do this, here's how you run a profitable business. And they've got these playbooks. And you're like, well, we've got a different playbook here, right? And I know when we were
Yeah.
working together, um, pulling together the right team was really, really important. I know you're really excited about the team you have now. How challenging was that to recruit, given I don't want to call them restrictions, but the commitment that you're making to purpose?
Yeah, I'd say that the commitment to purpose is important because we have the data to just prove that when people care about that over the mission, and this happens at every level, they're just more effective. And so it's not just
Yep.
me wanting you to care more. If you could be good at your job and not care, I'd probably be okay with it. The reality is it's a really tough job, and it takes a lot of resilience. And in order to be great at it, you do really have to care about it. And so, again, we think that this is all in service of a better business, not just, it's not just philosophical for us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to, well, one thing I want to let everyone who's listening know that at any time you can pop questions into the chat, or you can DM Josh and he'll field those questions and bring those in. We don't have it enabled so that everyone can have a live conversation with us. Unfortunately, it's just one of the restrictions of the Zoom webinar feature. Um, and hope to get to some of those questions as you bring them in. I wanted to pivot the conversation a little bit back to interacting with investors and interacting with your board. This might seem a little bit less sexy than talking about food and passion, but since we have so many investors in this community, they're often wondering, how can we support our incredible mission-driven founders better? And I'm wondering, like, before your IPO, what was the most challenging part of managing the relationships with investors?
So just going back, we bootstrapped the business kind of with angel investors, a lot of small, angels for the first
Yeah.
7 years. So we got to about 20 restaurants without any institutional capital. It was at that point where we brought in our first VC, and that was a huge moment for the brand. It was a huge moment where we could, for the first time, invest in technology, invest in the brand, invest in the infrastructure to scale from a
Mhm.
regional company to a national company. But it was important for us, given really the time frame that we were playing with. We knew that what we were trying to do it was going to take a lot of time. You have to build a huge infrastructure, and you got to build restaurants. It's one of those businesses that is very slow until it starts compounding. And
Yeah.
so we knew we needed people who understood the larger mission, understood the kind of the trends, the underlying trends of how people were changing where they're eating, and were that patient, flexible capital. And so I think we were very fortunate in having great investors along the way that cared about the mission and what we were doing, understood it as customers, but also saw what type of business could be created, understood, just the massive scale if done right. And so I think that's a lot of it is educating your investors. You know, you find investors. Investors aren't names on walls and buildings, they're people. So it's really building those relationships. And I've always approached investors as, or really, a lot of my interactions is how can I learn? How can I learn from everyone? So
Yeah.
investors who have invested in the category or across consumer, I'm always asking for advice. I've always said I know what I know and I know what I don't. And so approaching it with humility, asking advice, either whether I'm recruiting for something or whatever it is, like I'm pretty open in sharing my mistakes, sharing the challenges and asking for help. And I think that builds a trusting relationship with investors. And I think it's important to own up when you're wrong about things. And so
Yeah.
because of that, I think we're very fortunate to have, many of our investors from before going public still along. We brought on a lot of other great investors, and a lot of it is just telling the story about where we're going long term and hoping to find people that are in for the journey and for some of those ups and downs.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a story of an investor who like really went above and beyond to support you, to did something maybe surprising, out of character?
I'd say, there's one of my investors, his name is Evan Morgan. He was a partner at Revolution, which was the first VC, but he ended up, going on and starting his own fund, investing through his own fund, and has kind of stayed on board as a partner and friend. And it's just amazing what someone like that can do. It's almost become like another co-founder when they're, when you have, it crosses the line between friend and investor. And Evan's someone who I talk to still to this day, every single day.
Yeah.
And it's, hey, I saw this opportunity, or hey, how can I help you with this? Whatever it may be, just being there as a both emotional and strategic sounding board can be super helpful because it can be very lonely, running a company.
It can be.
And sometimes you feel isolated, and having someone like that to just kind of give you that emotional support, even when you're having a bad day, that like, hey, just remember that like you just got to compound this, just kind of close your eyes and think about if you just get through this crisis and do this for X years, like what will be. And so it helps also when you've worked with people for many years. I've worked with like Evan, we've been working together for 12 years now.
Yeah.
So we have, a lot of trust. We've seen ups and downs. We've seen bad days and seen how we've overcome them. So we know that even when things are bad, the only way is through. And investors that get that are really powerful because they also give you that emotional support. Then you know that they're behind you. And they help you take the bets and think long term versus, if you miss this, you have a bad week or a bad quarter, it's all over.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Jonathan, one of the things I've appreciated most about you over the years is just how creative you are and how fast your brain works and how quickly you come up with exciting new ideas. And I think that's also a challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs, right? They're like, what if we do this? What if we do this? I mean, I remember when we met, and I think I was either chatting with you or one of your co-founders, and you were like, Edward, we used to have a music festival, the Sweetgreen Music Festival, right? Like you guys did a lot of things that were not making and selling salads. And like, what is the role that investors can play in like helping really energetic, creative founders stay a little bit more focused, Because I'm sure you had a lot of people in your life at that point who were like, a music festival, sure, let's do a Sweetgreen Music Festival. And it may have been catalytic in transforming the company. It may have been a huge sap of energy and time and resources. Um, but yeah, tell me a little bit about, your advice to investors on helping those really excited young founders stay a little more focused.
I think it's a really tricky one because sometimes those non-conventional ideas actually are game changers for the business.
Yeah.
The music festival is an example. We hosted a music festival called the Sweet Life Festival for 7 years, from 2010 to 2017 or 16 or 17. And it was transformative for the brand. It really
Yeah.
positioned us more than just a restaurant company, but a lifestyle brand, and created a
Mhm.
real culture and movement around what we were doing. But there was a natural time where it probably should have stopped because it didn't make sense. When we were just in one
Yeah.
region and had a festival, it worked really well, and there was a point to rethink that. Um, so I think sometimes, if you look at the data, founders they have crazy ideas, but their performance over time is better when, you know,
Yeah.
founder-led CEOs. So I think it's figuring out how to harness those things. And that's what
Mm,
comes down to this like fewer, bigger, better. I do think in some ways you got to trust the founder, but help just harness them that you can't have that. You can't do this. You can't do every pet project. You got to have
right.
some constraints and some of those things that may sound crazy at the time. Like I remember when I brought this automation to our board, a lot of our board was like, you're crazy. Like, why, you know, no one's doing
Yeah.
this. Like automation in a restaurant. This was 5 years ago when we first started considering it. Now it's all anybody talks about. But I give it to my board and my investors because they're like, listen, we trust you. You want to do this? Like, you really believe it? Fine. Like, structure it in a way where it doesn't sink the whole company if it doesn't work.
Right.
And then
That was an acquisition, right? Did you acquire that?
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a quite pretty large acquisition to buy the technology and acquire the team.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think it's being selective about what are those bets and asking the right questions. Like, if this works, what's the upside versus what's the risk? And if you're going to take the moonshot bet, is the moonshot outcome there to come with it, or is it a moonshot bet with a, you know, just an average outcome? So just
Yeah.
helping kind of frame some of those things. And then the other thing to think about as we've gotten bigger is again with that founder creativity. A lot of that's good. You want to harness that and get that out into the, you know, put that in the brand. People can feel it. Too much of it can be distracting. So I think it's how do you build the structure, the team, and the work in a way where that input is brought in early, so that vision is kind of briefed into the work from day one and isn't coming late where it's now kind of throwing a wrench in a project that is, you know, really far down the line. And then the last thing is, you know, I think founders think everything can happen in a year.
Right.
So you're like, you do your yearly plans. All right, let's put all of our ideas in the year instead of, you know, building multi-year plans and thinking about the sequencing of things. And, you know, hey, we just like an easy example. We want to go into Sweetgreen. We've been talking about going to international for years. Well, we should go international. It's the right idea. The question is when. So what's the
Right.
right sequencing? What needs to be achieved before doing X or Y?
We've got a question that just came in on this topic from Ann Lipsitz in Portland, Oregon. Can you say more about how you structure the innovation piece? Is there a team you're handing off to when you've got big ideas? Is there an annual or quarterly process?
So we don't have a separate innovation team. We really like to kind of innovation be integrated throughout the organization. We do have an R&D team, which is really focused, which is really the automation team for the most part, and some other kind of kitchen automation. But
Yeah.
outside of that, innovation is kind of, you know, structure is kind of built in throughout the entire organization. We think that, you know, whether you're in ops, you're innovating, you're in culinary, you're innovating, like everyone has to, you know, have
Ah,
some level of like iterative innovation built into all that we do.
yeah. And how do you reward that? Because a lot of companies they say like we're an innovative company, innovation first, but people don't feel necessarily incentivized to innovate. Like a lot of employees, especially frontline employees, are like, I am just going to do my job.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take a risk because every time I take a risk, something goes wrong, and I don't want to be the one who, you know, has this litany of failures. What's your relationship with failure? What's your relationship with rewarding risk taking
I think
culturally?
that's yeah, I think that's part of way how you have said you have to create a culture that rewards it, which
Yeah.
means sometimes celebrate. You know, we have this idea of learning, you know, this cultural tenet around learning forward. And
Hmm.
what we say is every day better. So it's okay to fail as long as we learn from that. So we have a big culture of like doing retros, like what did we learn? How could have that been better? And just making that commonplace throughout the organization and share, you know, me leading, saying, hey, here's the mistake I made, owning up to it. Here's what I learned, and creating
Yeah.
that culturally and creating a safe space for people to, you know, to have mistakes as long as there's a forward progress. And I think that, you know, for me, if there's a failure without a lesson, it's a failure. But if there was,
Mhm.
you know, lesson and, you know, we did our best, we thought about everything and, you know, we put something out there, didn't work. As long as we learn, it's good.
As long as we learn, it's good. Yeah. Yeah. What's your process for sourcing ideas from the front line, from restaurants?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a philosophy here that all the answers are in our restaurants.
Yeah.
All our answers are in our stores. We do a lot to really connect our support center to our restaurants. One thing is just generally a culture of being out in the stores is really important. We do require all of our support center team members to work at least in the store at least twice a year. We encourage up to four
You
times.
still make salad sometimes?
Oh yeah, you going in there and like work different positions, like go do prep, go to work the front line. Like that's when
Yeah.
you check your work. You kind of like it's easy, it's one thing sitting behind a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint, but when you're in there, how does the customer feel? And no matter what role you're in a marketing role, how does the customer, you just worked on a big campaign. How is that touching the customer? You can't understand it until you walk into the customer's shoes. So
Yeah.
we do a lot to just, encourage our team members, including myself, about at least, quarter or so of my time is out visiting restaurants, going out to different cities, side by side with the team members, speaking to customers. And when I go, part of what I do is I do roundtables. So in every city I go to, I'll do a roundtable. I'll bring the head coaches together, which is our store managers. And it's partially, they think it's for them. It's really for me. It's,
Yeah.
hey, what's working? What's not? What are your ideas? What's your idea for this? Like just constantly understanding. And I really do believe so many great ideas come from those front lines. We also have some more kind of structural ways of bringing feedback up. So we have a group of head coaches we call the head coach champions, for example, where they meet monthly, sharing best practices around things and kind of circulating that throughout. We do expect, all of our regional general managers who are kind of we have 4 RGMs that run the company, that run the operations around the company. How do they share best practices? Again, in our QBR, there's a best practices section because we do give a lot of autonomy to our
QBR,
regions.
quarterly business review.
Yeah. So in our quarterly business review, there's, each RGM is running their business. We give them a lot of autonomy, but how can they come together and share those best practices so we can leverage them across the organization?
Yeah. Yeah. Jonathan, we only got about 10 minutes left. And I want to respect your time. I want to encourage anyone who has more questions to put them in the Q&A or to send them to Josh. Josh, do you have a couple questions that came in?
Yeah, I got one that just came in. It was given the competitive nature of the industry you're in, what strategies have been most successful in building customer loyalty for the brand?
Yeah. So, I think as the category's gone more competitive, I think we've learned how important it is to double down on our core.
Or is that what you said?
On our core, yeah. It's again, it's one of those maybe seem counterintuitive is like, hey, when you're, as you get bigger, try to broaden. And we have to figure out, we do have to broaden in some ways, but by being the best at what we do. So that's where this like relentless commitment to quality comes in. Like how if we can just create the best experience, the best quality food, cooked perfectly, portioned perfectly in a great environment, we know that we have a better product than the competition. And so that focus on the core is absolutely critical. And then there is, how do we meet slowly meet the customer where they are with certain innovations around our menu and experience, but do it in a Sweetgreen way. So it's this, invest in the core and protect the fringe, I think is really important. And then as we think about the, competition, in a lot of ways, it's actually competition around our category means more people are eating healthier food. It's building a larger category. So in a lot of ways, it's a positive thing because our real competition is not the other kind of healthy food places. It's traditional fast food. So
Interesting.
we can build a bigger market and get more people, from eating, industrialized processed food to real food. We're very pretty confident we will be the category leader in that space and the pie will grow. So we encourage the competition. We learn from them. Again, part of why I love capitalism, it forces you to get better. Free markets are good. And,
Yeah.
if it weren't for free markets, who knows where Sweetgreen would have been, what Sweetgreen would look like today. I look back
Right.
to when we
Maybe a
opened.
little boutique chain in
Yeah,
DC.
yeah.
Yeah.
When we, if you just when you go back to when we started, we didn't cook when we first opened the first restaurant. We didn't have the supply chain that we do today, the commitment to supply chain. We didn't cook everything from scratch. We didn't have these open kitchens. Like a lot of what we did was very different. Part of what drove it is when we started, we were one of one. Just having a place that served kind of salads and healthy food was innovative. As competition started popping up, we're like, we have to show our differentiators. What are we doing that nobody else can do? How do we truly create a category of one? And that positive tension has forced us to get better as a company and create better experiences and put better quality food out. And so that's why, again, I love capitalism, love free markets, because it, while it's challenging and you got to fight it out with your competition, it just makes us better.
Yeah, yeah. I thought maybe, well, thank you for that and for your commitment to quality, your commitment to purpose, your commitment to my own personal diet. I still eat Sweetgreen, 5, 6 times a month. I'm lucky I live 6 blocks between 2 Sweetgreen, so I'm perfectly situated, stay healthy. One topic that has been a popular one on this podcast is being a parent and a CEO. I've noticed, I did an analysis, and more than half of our clients over the years were married with kids and running very successful companies. They're the CEOs who want to have it all, right? We tend not to attract like the 22, 23-year-old living under their desk, hyper coders. We attract like the adults who are running businesses and also have families. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how you've made it work, right? Because when we first started working together, you were married. I think you had one on the way. Now you have
Yeah.
2 kids, right? How do you think about being a dad and a CEO? Like, what works for you? Let's get tactical. You know what I mean?
If you go back, I remember being single and traveling, working, average day, getting out of the office at like 9 or so, and thinking how could, I remember I had some executives that had to like get home for bedtime or dinner, and I like couldn't even imagine how that was possible. But again, I've realized that in order for me to be successful and make this sustainable, it has my I have this like the way I think about my life, this like house of equilibrium has to be in equilibrium. And
Mhm.
so my family is part of that. And so making sure that, I'm taking care of my wife and taking care of my kids and I'm a present father, like I want at the end of the day to look back at a good, successful, happy life across all of these categories, not just in
Yeah.
business. And I
Mhm.
believe that by having be things when things are good at home, you're better at work. So
Sure.
you got to figure out that balance. I'd say first, I'm very lucky. I have an amazing wife and partner, just incredibly supportive,
Yeah.
understands the life of living with an entrepreneur, and is my best coach and kind of sounding board. But I've had to structure life differently, and so that means you know I like to take my son to school in the morning. So that means I'm waking up really early to work out and get my work in so I can take him to school. Don't take, I'm not taking meetings before 9 o'clock, where I used to take meetings at 8 o'clock. I try to get home by 7 o'clock for bedtime when I can. So like I've had to structure the day around some of those things and then
Yeah.
work around it. So that means, oftentimes working on the weekends or, I used to never like to work after I got home. I used to like leave it at the office. Now it's like, all right, I have to put the kids to bed and I have to do some more work. Like you got to do it. And so you figure out it's amazing. It's also amazing how much focus it creates when you now
Mhm.
know you can't stay at the office forever and you got to get things done. It helps you be more productive because before it was all right, I can just stay here until everything's done. I can just work till it's over.
Right. Right. It almost creates a certain inefficiency.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
constraint now. It's like, all right, I have this much time.
Yep.
What's the most important thing I need to do? And
Yeah.
the reason it's helped me become a better leader. Well, first of all, parenting, I think, helps you become a better leader in many ways
Mhm.
because, leading kids and leading large organizations, not that different in a lot of ways. But so there's a lot of lessons that you kind of back and forth. But it's also creating that constraint creates a lot of focus. And I think about the meetings I
Uh,
used to take, talk about the distractions, right? Like a lot of inbound would take random meetings, would explore, kind of chase these things. And now it's like, all right, what's going to drive the business? What are the top 3 things every day? And I do a lot of writing and planning. And so like every night before the next day, I'm writing like what needs to happen tomorrow. So when I
yeah.
wake up and I, get to work, like I know like what are the things that I need to do that day. And so just using the family to use that constraint to create focus.
Yeah. Yeah. If you notice, water flows fastest at the places where the river is more constrained,
There
right?
you go.
That's where there's a lot of turbidity. That's where it's like really flowing fast. When the river spreads out, it turns into like a little bit of a lake.
Yeah.
And the water just gets a little dead, right? So all of the action is in the constraint. I think that's a really
That's right.
beautiful
Right.
insight to end on.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I want to thank you so much for this. An hour of incredible insights. I think